Within every championship run, there's always a play that stands out, one that fans and players look back at being the most important. But with Baseball Reference, we can find out which plays were statistically the most important with championship win probability added. So let's take a look at the 5 most important plays for teams that ended up winning the World Series.
Totally sports-esque. Major League.
Since we will only be looking at the most important plays for teams that ended up winning the World Series, let's look at a few that we won't be able to include. The most championship win probability added on a single play for a team that didn't win the World Series and 4th overall didn't happen too long ago. And that was Rajai Davis's game-tying 2-run home run in the 8th inning of Game 7 of the 2016 World Series. The Cubs appeared that they were going to cruise to their first title in 108 years, with Jon Lester pitching 3 rather stress-free innings in relief of Kyle Hendricks. The Cubs' win probability was all the way up to 93% before Lester faced his final batter in the 8th inning with Jose Ramirez, who hit a single. Aroldis Chapman would then come in relief of Lester and gave up a double to Brandon Guyer that would drive in a run and brought up Rajai Davis. After battling and choking up on the bat, Davis would send the pitch over the left field wall to tie the game, adding 39.04% to the Indians' championship win probability. But after a rain delay, Ben Zobrist would hit a go-ahead double in the top of the 10th that added 31.27% to the Cubs' championship win probability. And that would go up to 100% when Mike Montgomery would get Michael Martinez to ground out, and the Cubs would end the curse of the Billy Goat. The most championship win probability added for a non-World Series play in 5th overall was Francisco Cabrera's walk-off single in Game 7 of the 1992 NLCS. Coming into the bottom of the 9th, the Braves trailed the Pirates 2-0 with the Pirates having a 92% chance to win. But after a Ron Gant sac fly, the lead was cut in half with 1 out. Then after a walk and a pop-out, there were 2 outs with the bases loaded. Francisco Cabrera came up to bat with Damon Berryhill at first, Sid Bream at second, and David Justice at third. Then on the 4th pitch of the at-bat, as Barry Bonds refused to move in, giving the finger to Andy Van Slyke, Cabrera hit a line drive single to left. And though Sid Bream was a slow runner, he was sent as Bonds would have to throw across his body, and despite the slow speed, he made it home. And that play added 36.84% to the Braves' championship win probability. And that play remains the only play in a winner-take-all game where a team was losing and down to the last out and ended up winning on that play. Despite this, the Braves would end up losing the World Series in 6 games to the Blue Jays. And one final play is that Bobby Thompson's walk-off home run in the 1951 NL tiebreaker game added the most championship win probability for a regular season game, and the 8th overall with 35.56%. With there being no expanded playoffs in this time, whoever won the tiebreaker game went to the World Series. So in a sense, this was the NLCS, and makes more sense with the added context. And you can watch my video about the 1951 Giants in this play that makes a walk-off possibly fraudulent. So with all that said, let's now start looking at the top 5 most important plays for World Series winning teams. At number 5 is Jim Northrup's triple in the top of the 7th inning in Game 7 of the 1968 World Series. The Tigers forced a Game 7 after facing a 3-1 deficit to the Cardinals, and in a year of low scoring that became known as the Year of the Pitcher, Game 7 of that year's World Series went right along. In a game started by Bob Gibson, who had broke the record for most strikeouts in a World Series game with 17 in Game 1, and Mickey Lolich, who already had 2 complete game victories in the series, it was unsurprising to see a pitching duel. The game was scoreless through 6 innings, and the Cardinals had the advantage in win probability through most of the game, but not by much. And things were still slightly in their favor after a strikeout and groundout to start the top of the 7th. But then, the Tigers strung together 2 two-out hits, both singles hit by Norm Cash and Willie Horton. Then Jim Northrup came to bat, and on the very first pitch, he lined a ball to center fielder Curt Flood. Flood was one of the best center fielders in the league and would go on to win multiple Gold Gloves. But on this play, Flood made the mistake of starting in on the ball, then having to reverse direction, and the ball went well over Flood's head, and Northrop would end up on third, while Cash and Horton would score to break the game open. There is debate on if Flood ever had a chance to catch the ball. Northrop himself thought Flood never had a chance. The Red Shane Deans expected Flood to make the catch. But once Flood started in, he then had to reverse his direction and gain speed. But he slipped on the wet grass, and at that point, there was no chance. and whether Flood could have caught the ball or not, that Northrop triple was the deciding play, as it would add 35.92% to the Tigers' championship win probability. Northrop would score before the end of the inning after a Bill freehand double that would be more than enough for Mickey Lolich, who would only give up 1 run as he completed his 3rd complete game victory of the series as the Tigers won their 3rd World Series title. At number 4 is Bill Mazeroski's walk-off home run in Game 7 of the 1960 World Series, and we'll be touching more on this later in the video. The Pirates' pennant run was a surprise as they finished in 4th place the season prior. As for the Yankees, it wasn't a surprise, as this was their 10th pennant in 12 years. And if the World Series was won with an aggregate score, this series would be a blowout. As for the first 6 games, the Yankees outscored the Pirates 46-17. But obviously, that didn't matter, as the Pirates and Yankees each won 3 games, and the series was tied, and Game 7 was tied, going into the bottom of the 9th. Rolf Terry, who ended the 8th for the Yankees, was still on the mound to start the 9th, and coming to bat in a 9-9 game in the bottom of the 9th was Pirates second baseman Bill Mazeroski, who wore number 9. With the wild events that occurred before that inning, Mazeroski forgot that he was leading off the inning. The Pirates' first base coach had to remind him, and he quickly grabbed his bat. Then after taking a pitch, Mazeroski would send the pitch 406 feet over the left center wall and remains the only player to hit a walk-off home run in Game 7 of the World Series. And he danced around the bases like a school kid, and as he touched home and sealed the deal for the Pirates, his home run added 36.74 to the Pirates' championship win probability. That was obviously at 100% at that point. That single play was perhaps the biggest reason Mazeroski made the Hall of Fame, and this home run is even more iconic because of the wild events that led up to the play, but we'll get to those events later in the video. And we move to the 21st century for number 3, which is Tony Womack's game-tying double in Game 7 of the 2001 World Series. As expected, with Curt Schilling and Roger Clemens being the starting pitchers, the game was a pitcher's duel. The score was 1-1 going into the 8th until Alfonso Soriano hit a solo home run to lead off the inning, which was a play that added 23.12% to the Yankees' championship win probability, the 47th most of all time. And the score would remain 2-1 going into the bottom of the 9th, with the greatest and most dominant closer of all time, Mariano Rivera, heading to the mound, after already striking out the side in the 8th, which ended with the Yankees having an 82% chance to win the game. But the momentum and odds would shift towards the Diamondbacks after the bottom of the 9th started with a Mark Gray single and Mariano Rivera throwing the ball into center field after fielding Damian Miller's bunt. Rivera would redeem himself after successfully throwing Mark Grace out at 3rd after another bunt, which brought Tony Womack up with 1 out and runners on 1st and 2nd. After falling down 2-0, Rivera would even the count after a strike and a foul ball. Then on the 5th pitch of the at-bat, Womack would hit a line drive down the right field line. Pinch runner Midray Cummings scored, Bell went to 3rd, and Womack was on 2nd with a double, and the game was tied. Rivera would hit Craig Counsell on the 2nd pitch of the at-bat, loading the bases with still 1 out. And after a foul ball, Rivera would throw an inside pitch to Luis Gonzalez, who would hit a soft floater that barely reached the outfield grass. But with the infield drawn in, that was enough. And in just their 4th year of existence, the Diamondbacks defeated the Yankees to win their first and only World Series. Of course, Luis Gonzalez's walk-off hit is one of the most memorable plays in MLB history for good reason. But Womack's double is arguably one of the most overlooked plays in MLB history. That play added 49.75% to the Diamondbacks' championship win probability. And regardless of the stats, we can just consider the fact that Womack tied Game 7 of the World Series in the bottom of the 9th off the greatest closer in history who was still well in his prime. And after Womack tied the game, this was Rivera's first blown postseason save since 1997. He had converted 23 straight saves, and from the time of his last blown save to Game 5 of the series, he appeared in 38 games with a .38 ERA. So the added context makes Womack's double one of the most clutch and impressive hits in MLB history. And for number 2, we're going all the way back to 1912 for Tris Speaker's game-tying single in Game 8 of the 1912 World Series. Yes, that's right, this play happened in Game 8. This was the only World Series to finish in 8 games in a best-of-7 format, and the reason there were 8 games is what happened in Game 2. In the bottom of the 10th, the New York Giants were up 6-5 over the Red Sox when Tris Speaker came to bat. He lined a pitch to the center field gap, and as he was rounding 3rd, Giants third baseman Buck Herzog actually threw himself in front of Speaker to prevent him from coming home. But Speaker got up anyway to tie the game, and after no team scored in the 11th inning, the game was called off due to darkness. So in a sense, neither team could handle the postseason lights.
No, get those lights off!
And after another 5 games, with 3 of those decided by 3 runs or less, the Giants and Red Sox were tied after 7 games. On the mound was Christy Mathewson, who already pitched 19 innings in the series. He went up against Hugh Bedient, who gave up 1 run through 7 before being relieved by Smokey Joe Wood. Mathewson would match Bedient and Smokey Joe, giving up just 1 run through 9 innings. The game would go into extra innings for the second time in the series, and the Giants would take the lead in the top of the 10th after a Red Murray double and Fred Merkle single that added 29.15% to the Giants' championship win probability, the 24th highest of all time. Christy Mathewson would head out to the mound for his 10th inning. Then on the 3rd pitch of the first at-bat, Clyde Engel hit a soft fly ball to center that was dropped by Fred Snodgrass, and allowed Engel to go to second. This play would become known as a $30,000 muff because of the difference between the winning and losing shares. Snodgrass did get to redeem himself by making a catch to get Harry Hooper out. Then Steve Yerkes would walk, bringing Tris Speaker up. And on the first pitch, Speaker hit a pop-up into foul territory. Fred Merkle, Jack Myers, and Christy Mathewson would all go for the ball, but none of them would catch it. Thark claims that the Red Sox bench disrupted the timing, and if so, it worked. Speaker shouted to Mathewson after the foul ball, "Well, you just called for the wrong man, and it's gonna cost you the ball game." And he was right, because on the next pitch, he hit a single to right that scored Engel to tie the game, and put Yerkes at third. Duffy Lewis would be intentionally walked to load the bases, and on the 4th pitch of the at-bat, Larry Gardner would hit a fly ball to right, Yerkes would tag up, and score the winning run to give the Red Sox their 2nd World Series. It's actually incredible how similar this game's ending was to Game 7 of the 2001 World Series. Fred Merkle's single was similar to Alfonso Soriano's home run, and the last inning featured a key error and a comeback off a dominant pitcher. Womack's double added 49.75% to the Diamondbacks' championship win probability, and Tris Speaker's single just edged his hit out by adding 50.52%. And to add even more to the similarity after each at-bat, Duffy Lewis and Craig Counsell would get on without putting a ball in play to load the bases, and both World Series ended with players hitting the ball where it was needed. It's hard to pinpoint why Speaker edged out Womack given that the plays were very similar, but they were both some of the most important plays in MLB history that occurred nearly 90 years apart. And at number 1, we go back to Game 7 of the 1960 World Series for Hal Smith's 3-run home run in the bottom of the 8th. This incredible game quickly went into the Pirates' favor after they took a 4-0 lead after the 2nd inning. The Pirates would retain their lead until the top of the 6th. Mickey Mantle's single would drive in a run to make it 4-2. Then with Mantle and Tony Kubek on base, Yogi Berra would hit a 3-run home run off Roy Face to give the Yankees the lead. That home run added 34.32% to the Yankees' championship win probability, the 10th highest of all time, and one of the 3 in the top 10 featured in this game. Only Game 7 of the 2016 World Series has more than one in the top 20. No runs would score for either team in the 7th, then in the top of the 8th, the Yankees added to their lead with an RBI single by Johnny Blankard and an RBI double by Clete Boyer to put the Yankees up 7-4 and give them a 94% chance to win Game 7. But the Pirates put themselves right back into the game after 3 straight singles to start the bottom of the 8th, including an RBI single by Dick Grote. After a bunt and a flyout, the Pirates had 2 outs with runners on 2nd and 3rd with Roberto Clemente up the bat. He would hit a single that would score a run and bring the Pirates within 1, and bring us to Hal Smith's at-bat. Smith actually didn't start the game as he replaced catcher Smokey Burgess, who was pinch ran for by Joe Christopher. So in Smith's first at-bat, he would go up against Jim Coates, who would go up in the count 1-2 before throwing the ball. Then, on the 5th pitch of the at-bat, he would send the ball over the fence to put the Pirates up 9-7, adding 63.52% to the Pirates' championship win probability, a massive gap between the top 2 spots, and took the Pirates' chances to win the game from 30% to 93%. And what added to the importance of the home run and the craziness of the game is what happened in the top of the 9th. After the Yankees led off the inning with 2 singles, Harvey Haddix would come into the game, and with 1 out, Mickey Mantle would drive in a run to make it a 1-run game with runners on the corners. Then, in a rather strange play, Yogi Berra would hit a grounder to first, Rocky Nelson would touch first, and Mantle would somehow make it back safely to first. Meanwhile, pinch runner Gil McDougall would score the tying run. Haddix would get out of the inning with the game still tied, and as we already know, the chaos of the inning caused Mazeroski to forget that he was leading off the inning. But he was reminded and would hit a walk-off home run to win the World Series for the Pirates. And adding more context to Bill Mazeroski's walk-off home run, we can see why this play becomes more iconic, and this game is one of the greatest ever. An incredible 10 runs were scored in the 8th and 9th with 3 lead changes. This would be the highest scoring Game 7 in World Series history, and strangely enough, there wasn't a single strikeout. And looking at Hal Smith's home run, it's easy to see why this added the most championship win probability. Unlike other plays in the list, this didn't tie the game. The Yankees were 1 out from getting out of the inning with another chance to add to the lead, and they took the worst possible blow with a 3-run home run. And as mentioned, with the Yankees scoring 2 in the top of the 9th, those 3 RBIs became massive, which in itself explains the massive gap between the top 2 spots. So after looking at the most important plays for World Series winning teams, it's simply a case of players you may least expect delivering massive blows to tie or put their team ahead late into a decisive game. And we'll have to wait and see what random player will become a team legend this year.
Random player with the swing of his life.